Three spine-chilling tales of grief that turned into haunted nightmares. Unexplained terror unveiled. In the quiet suburbs of Maplewood, Pennsylvania, Sarah's world shattered the night her husband Tom died in a construction accident. The sound of the doorbell echoed in the empty house like a sinister omen. She hesitated, dread clawing at her insides, but the monotony of grief had turned her into a ghost of her former self. Living in that quaint home with its white picket fence was now akin to wandering through a curse. Shadows danced across the walls as she stepped into the dim light, every creak of the floorboards sounding like a whisper of disbelief. Hadn't they always vowed to face life together? That promise hung heavy in the air like fog, suffocating her. The neighborhood potluck was supposed to be a reprieve, an act of normalcy in her disrupted world. Yet as she entered the bright-lit gathering, laughter met her with an undercurrent of murmurings that felt like daggers. She was an outsider in her own home. That night, the forced smiles of her friends morphed into expressions of speculation that tightened around her like a noose. "Did you know Tom wasn't always home at night?" one friend whispered too loudly, eyes darting nervously. Maybe he had secrets. The air chilled as chill ran down her spine. What did they know that she didn't? Did she really know Tom at all? The shadows deepened back home. Flickering lights cast twisted shapes on the walls, taunting her with memories that turned sour. It was all too much. And then she found it. An anonymous letter slipped under her door, cold as a grave. It revealed an unsettling truth. Tom's death was no accident. Her heart raced, the air felt thick around her. Panic spiraled within as whispers filled her mind. Who had turned her community against her? Who would betray her at a time like this? The very walls felt like they were closing in, pressing her with their weight. Before she could breathe, the night dragged her east toward the Ghost Lot, an abandoned construction site rumored to be haunted. Old tales whispered of spirits wronged, tethered to the land. With each step toward that desolate ground, turmoil coursed through her. What did Tom have to do with this cursed place? She rushed into the depths of her mind, piecing together fragments of his stories. And as she unraveled the threads, paranoia seeped deeper. She could feel unseen eyes tracking her every move, lurking like predators, ready to snatch away her sanity. That night, the darkness settled in. A figure beneath the neighbor's fence caught her eye, an unidentified shadow flickering against the moonlight. Fear gripped her. Then a knock startled her from the malaise. Stunned, she hesitated, cold sweat gathering on her brow. "Who is it?" she barely whispered, as silence answered her. Just when hope seemed to return, and she loosened her grip on the terror, the kind neighbor arrived with a casserole. But something about his smile sent chills through her. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue." Steeling herself, Sarah prepared to confront her fear, but with every tick of the clock, the shadows grew. Memories of Tom collided with a dawning realization. Their life, their love, every laugh and conversation might have been a facade. Just as she rustled through her thoughts, a thunderous knock echoed again, louder this time, an urgent plea or a sinister reminder. The silence fell heavy as she moved to the door, heart hammering in her chest. Who or what awaited her on the other side, ready to unveil the darkest truths entwined in her once simple life? The air thickened around Sarah as she reached for the doorknob, her fingers trembling. With a slow, deliberate turn, she pulled the door open just enough to reveal the world beyond. Darkness, wrapped in uncertainty and terror. The neighbor stood there, his face half hidden by shadows, the casserole dish in his hands almost glowing in the dim light. "Sarah," he said, his voice softer than she remembered, almost conspiratorial. "I thought you might like something warm tonight." "Thank you." Her words barely came out, feeling like stones lodged in her throat. She forced herself to meet his gaze, but the same creepy smile lingered, stretching too wide, too unnaturally. An icy shiver raced down her spine, warning her. As she took the casserole, the faintest whiff of something burnt wafted from it, making her stomach churn. "You don't have to keep checking on me, you know," she replied, surprised at the mix of defiance and fear she felt. "I'm okay." He tilted his head, the smile never wavering. "Just wanted to make sure you're all right, given everything." His words dripped with something unspoken, a tension hanging between them like a storm cloud. "Right," she whispered, taking a step back to close the door. But her curiosity was still alive. What did he know about Tom? The thought gnawed at her insides. Just as she turned away, the door creaked open, pushed by an unseen force. Confusion flooded her, and before she could react, he stepped inside, invading her space without an invitation. "Your house could use some light," he declared, the shadows growing denser around them. He flicked on a lamp, bathing the room in a harsh yellow glow, puncturing the oppressive atmosphere. These things can be dreary, and alone is never easy. Alarm bells rang in her mind. "I appreciate the visit, but maybe I should—"
"Be alone?" "Of course, dear," he said, leaning a little too close, his breath warm and uncomfortable on her cheek. "But you wouldn't be lonely if you learned to embrace the company of the others, the lost souls who wander through the night." His eyes glinted with a manic sparkle, and dread washed over her. The room seemed to pulse with energy, and she could swear she caught a glimpse of something moving outside, another shadow flitting past, too quick to identify. It felt as though the walls themselves were listening, judgments held in sinister silence. With a shaky breath, Sarah edged back, her heart racing. "I think I need to rest." "Don't fight it," he murmured, stepping away slowly, his voice now a whisper. "Darkness has its truths, much deeper than the night could ever tell. You'll understand soon enough." The door slammed shut behind him, leaving Sarah in a whirlwind of confusion and fear. She clutched the casserole, the warmth simmering beneath her fingers, a weight that somehow felt both comforting and threatening. "Understand what?" she murmured to herself, trying to rein in her panic. The walls started to feel oppressive again. Every corner seemed more sinister than before, every noise echoing with renewed weight. She took a step back, her breath hitching as she reluctantly glanced around the room. The shadows pooled like thick ink, forming shapes that made her heart pound. What could he possibly mean? Had Tom been drawn into this darkness, tied to the ghost lot and its whispers? Suddenly, a crash from outside shattered her thoughts, a loud thud as if something heavy had fallen. She rushed to the window, heart in her throat, cringing at what she might see. Outside, just beyond her fence, the flickering light revealed a figure lying sprawled on the ground. Her heart stopped. Was it possible? Her breath caught as the figure began to rise. What had Sarah stumbled upon in her quiet little neighborhood? And who else lurked in the darkness, waiting to reveal the truth? The figure outside continued to push itself up, clumsily at first, like a marionette with tangled strings. Sarah's heart raced, pounding against her ribs as she squinted through the glass, desperately trying to identify what she was seeing. Whoever or whatever was there made her blood run cold. Tom? No, Not Tom. The shape was too gaunt, too twisted beneath the dim light. All at once, reality crashed down harder than the thunder outside. The fear that had been simmering broke free like a dam. She stumbled back from the window, the casserole slipping from her grip. It hit the floor with a dull thud, its contents spilling out in a sad, warm chaos. A hollow laugh echoed through the room, faint and chilling. She strained to hear, but it quickly turned into silence. A silence that wrapped around her, a living thing, heavy and suffocating. Then came the scratching, a faint sound like fingernails on wood, stirring from just outside her door. Panic flared, and
She darted to the front, peering through the peehole. Her breath rushed out in a shocked gasp. There it was again, the same shadow, twisted and lost, haunting her doorstep. It stood there, unmoving. "Tom?" she whispered, voicing the name that had haunted her dreams since he vanished. The figure leaned forward slightly, and she thought she could see the face now, distorted and pale, a parody of what she once knew. His eyes, if those were even Tom's eyes, were dark and lifeless, brimming with despair. She sensed it then. The weight of anguish hung in the air, growing thicker, pregnant with memories she feared to revisit. "Sarah?" The voice drifted through the door, weak and barely recognizable, as if he were struggling to remember how to form words. "Help me." Her throat tightened. The ghostly timbre was painful, a haunting echo of their shared laughter, now twisted into something she barely recognized. How could she help him? Was it really him, or the result of her spiraling sanity? "Go away!" she screamed, racing back from the door, breath ragged. "You're not him!" But the scratching didn't relent. Instead, it turned into an insistent thumping, each echoing beat sending spikes of terror through her. The door rattled with each impact, as if the very thing beyond wanted to break free from its confines. And then there were voices, ghostly whispers, layered over each other, rising like a crescendo. "Come play with us, Sarah," they called out, the words dripping with sorrow and longing. Her pulse quickened as the shadows thickened, darkening corners of the room that once felt safe. A dizzying panic surged within her. For all those nights she had thought of him, of Tom, of what she had lost. But now, did she dare confront that grief? The offer of companionship in her loneliness wrapped around her like a vice, squeezing tightly. "Sarah!" a voice shouted again, desperate now and sharp as a blade. She recoiled from the door, frozen, as her fears shattered and coalesced into something concrete. Whatever was out there, a lost soul or a twisted reflection of her pain, was pulling her in. Something inside her sparked against the darkness closing in. She would need to face it. She couldn't run anymore. Mustering her courage, she stepped toward the door, reaching for the knob, dread igniting in her chest. As she twisted it open, but just before she could fully open the door, a harrowing scream tore through the night, echoing off the walls of her mind. In the instant of that scream, the shadows in the room surged forward, pulling against her very essence, promising answers she wasn't sure she wanted. What horror awaited on the other side? Would revealing the truth mean losing herself forever? The world around her dimmed, and the weight of the ghostly voices grew, combining too painfully with her own thoughts as the door swung ajar. The question hung in the air, clawing at her sanity. Could she step into the darkness, into her past, or would she be trapped forever in this nightmare? As the door creaked open, the darkness beyond seeped into the foyer. It was thick, like smoke, wrapping around Sarah's legs, almost pleading. Her heart thundered in her chest as she stepped over the threshold, the world outside becoming a distorted nightmare. The figure lingered a mere few feet away, a grotesque silhouette in the night. "Tom?" she breathed again, her voice barely a whisper swallowed by the darkness.
His head twitched in response, a sad imitation of the man she loved. And then he moved, his limbs jerking unnaturally as he took a step forward. Her fingers clenched the doorframe, knuckles white as fear tightened its grip on her heart. Each movement felt like watching a puppet with broken strings. "Please, help me." The sound of his voice wormed its way into her mind, a twisted mockery of the comfort it once offered. The words dripped with an urgency that struck her core, igniting memories that flared like a dying ember. Was he even real? Was this his spirit, begging for salvation, or something else entirely? As the figure stepped into the faint light, she recoiled. His skin appeared stretched taut over his bones, an eerie pallor that had stripped away any familiarity. The emptiness in his eyes sent chills crawling up her spine, icy fingers running through her veins. She had seen that look before, the reflection of despair, but never this closely, never in flesh. "Tom, it's not you," she gasped, backing away. The shadows closed in, wrapping around her like a shroud, suffocating. The thumping from the door grew heavier, as if the ghostly whispers were now physically trying to break through. "Let us in!" they cried, their sorrow mingling with desperation, creating a horrendous symphony that echoed in her ears. "Leave me alone!" Sarah shouted, her voice cracking in panic. But the shadows pressed closer, revealing ghostly figures of children, their faces pale and gaunt, glimmering like lost souls. Their eyes were hollow voids, grim reflections of horror and innocence trapped in an unending cycle. They swirled around her, beckoning with skeletal hands, urging her to join them. "Play with us, forever," they sang, their voices melding into a haunting lullaby that threatened to drown her. The smell of decay crept into her nostrils, wood rot, long-buried memories, the scent of loss. It tugged at her consciousness, summoning visions of laughter that had once filled their home, now replaced by echoes of emptiness. She clutched her head, trying to block it out, but the images danced before her, relentless. "Tom," she cried out, pushing towards the shadow that was once her husband. "Where are you?" He tilted his head, confusion crossing his features. "I'm lost." The shadows pressed in tighter, hissing into the stillness. They were growing more restless, agitated. Each flash of despair sent another shuddering thump against the door behind her. What were they? Could he still be in there, buried under layers of darkness? "Tom, you have—"
"Fight! Fight them!" But he merely swayed, trapped in the web of despair that had consumed him. The ghoulish children started to drift back, their motions an invitation, their smiles cruel. With newfound desperation, she lunged towards Tom, reaching for him, her fingers inches away from his cold, trembling hand. As she touched him, the world around her shattered. A scream echoed through the void, sharp and piercing, pulling her deeper into the chaos. The shadows blurred and twisted around her, promising her a journey into the past, a journey she wasn't sure she could survive. "Come play with us, Sarah," they taunted. What awaited her in that swirling abyss? Could she grasp the truth, or would the darkness consume her whole? The final piece of her shattered reality hung at the edge, teasing her with its perilous allure. With one last surge of courage, she grabbed Tom's hand, the fabric of her very existence teetering as she stepped into the void. Would they find solace together, or be lost to the shadows forever? The void swallowed them, dragging Sarah and Tom into its depths, where light flickered like dying stars. A heavy, suffocating silence surrounded them, a blanket of despair that pressed against her chest. Her heart raced as she fought to hold on to Tom's cold hand, anchoring herself to the remnants of her fading reality. "Where are we?" she gasped, as shadows twisted and turned around them, forming grotesque shapes that whispered her name. "Help me!" The reply echoed, but it wasn't Tom's voice anymore. It had become hollow, a remnant of a child lost in the darkness. "Help us," others chimed in, the chorus eerie and pitiful, tugging at her sanity. She spun around, desperate to find Tom, but the shadows were alive, swirling in a macabre dance that blurred her vision. The children's laughter echoed endlessly, mixing with cries of torment that cut into her soul. Each giggle was a knife, each sob a reminder of closure never found. "Tom!" she screamed, the sound of her own voice barely piercing through the oppressive gloom. She stumbled forward, losing her balance amidst the swirling darkness. Fingers of fog wrapped around her limbs, pulling her down, drawing her into a pit of despair. She fought against it, yanking at the unseen tendrils, but for every inch she gained, they pulled her back too. "Fight us if you can," the shadows hissed, taunting her. "Join us and feel our pain." Suddenly, a wisp of light flickered, sparking a glimmer of hope. She bore down on it, her fear morphing into determination. "Tom!" she yelled again, this time focusing on the light, letting it guide her. As she drew nearer, it expanded and illuminated cracked faces, sunken eyes pleading in silence. "Sarah?" Two faces broke the haze, each more haunting than the last. One resembled the children, frozen in time, and the other was her mother, skin taut with sorrow. "Don't, please, don't forget us." Memories surged, laughter, warmth, stolen moments of happiness, and Sarah's resolve faltered. They were ghouls of her past, begging for recognition instead of release. She could almost reach out and touch them, almost feel their warmth, before the chill of realization settled again. They were lost. "Fight back! Remember!" she screamed, summoning every ounce of longing for the life she once led. The shadows reacted violently, the air thickened with rage. "No, you don't belong here!" They lashed out, darkness boiling like a storm. Feeling the world quake, she repositioned herself, hoping to spark the connection with Tom once more. "I'm here, stay with me." But the malevolent whispers escalated, transforming into shrieks of anguish that shook her very being. "You'll never escape," they echoed, the words vibrating through her bones, deepening her freeze of terror. The childlike voices warped, their innocence lost beneath layers of dread. Just as they closed in, blinding her with despair, Sarah felt a sudden jolt, a tethering pull that yanked her sharply back towards the flickering light. "Tom, don't let go!" With a fierce grip, she surged forward and finally saw his face. He was fading further into shadow, but his eyes, they still glimmered faintly with recognition. "Together," she urged, "we can fight this." Another rush of energy coursed through her, warming her limbs, filling her with the remnants of unyielding love and determination. But a wailing scream shattered the air as the children lunged for her and Tom, desperate to drag them into eternal despair. As the abyss writhed around her, Sarah knew they stood at the edge of salvation or annihilation. She needed to choose before the darkness tore them apart. Would she sacrifice her own to save Tom, or lose him to the shadows forever? The decision crashed over her like a tidal wave, each throb of her heart magnifying the intensity of the moment. "Tom," she breathed, feeling the pull of the past against the fire of her will. But in that instant, the shadows lunged forward, fangs bared, and Sarah braced herself as the two worlds collided in a deafening crescendo of chaos. What awaited her on the other side of this struggle? Would they emerge whole, or become yet another layer of sorrow? As the darkness reached for her, a chilling question lingered in the air. What price would they ultimately pay for their freedom? The moment a cacophony of screams erupted, everything fractured. The shadows lunged, their moth-like bodies darting and swirling around them like a violent storm. Sarah held tightly to Tom, feeling the cold slip of his fingers between hers. In that frantic chaos, she couldn't tell where darkness ended and where her reality persisted. "Tom," she cried out, her voice full of panic, "we have to fight. Don't you dare let them take you." He looked back at her, his expression hardening, battling against the shadows that tried to suck him in. But his voice trembled. I'm scared, Sarah. I can't do this alone." The darkness hissed, a spiraling torrent of regret that clawed at her mind. "He's weak. Just let go. We won't hurt you." The chorus wrapped around her, seductive and deceptive. It was a cruel lullaby coaxing her to surrender. But deep inside, she felt a spark of fierce defiance ignite. "You don't own us!" she shouted, anger fueling her resolve. The flicker of light pulsed above her, offering them a lifeline, a dying star refusing to fade. She saw the faces in the shadows extend their hands, but she could see now they were not just trying to pull Tom away, they were reaching out to her too. "Remember what we had," they cried, and Sarah felt the weight of her memories threaten to crush her under their nostalgia. The echoes of laughter, warmth, love, but also betrayal and despair coiled around her heart. They were dragging her down, sinking her as much as the wailing voices of lost children. "No, I won't lose you, Tom!" She tightened her grip fiercely. "I love you too much to let this happen." The moment her voice pierced the shadow-saturated air, a tiny tremor rippled through the darkness. It faltered, hesitated, and for a flickering heartbeat, the faces of the lost, shifted to expressions of confusion. Their once menacing features momentarily caught off guard by the sheer power of her love. "Fill us with your memories," they screamed, both wrathful and desperate. "Give us your sorrow." "No, I'll let go of the pain. I won't burden myself with grief anymore." Her chest heaved, and she pushed past the fear, channeling everything she had into a wave of light. For every moment she had cherished, and every ounce of love she felt for Tom, she threw it straight into the void. "You don't get to control us!" As she unleashed the bond of their shared existence, the darkness shrieked, limbs whipping around violently like a tornado. The shadows reeled back as if scalded, hissing, "You'll regret this!" Suddenly, the wisp of light surged from her heart, blinding and warm, and in that instant it expanded, forming a shield around them that started pushing the shadows away. Sarah felt her energy surging as each flicker burned away layers of despair, banishing the ghouls. But just as hope began to settle in, reality shifted again. Glancing towards Tom, dread washed over her. "Where are you?" she pleaded, watching the space beside her warp and twist. "He was being consumed! Help!" His voice cracked, lost within the chaotic maelstrom. She could see his outline dimming, his figure fading like a photograph underwater. The shadows screeched, rejoicing in their victory, claiming their prize piece by piece. "No!" Panic clawed at her throat as she lunged toward him. The light buzzed like a swarm of bees, engulfing them both. Their hands brushed, but the grip slipped as shadows coiled tighter. "Stay with me!" she screamed, mouth dry as tears streamed down her face. And then, abruptly, everything stilled. The tempest paused. Silence followed, thick and tangible. Sarah's breathing echoed as she and Tom floated within a cocoon of light, the tumultuous shadows retreating into a corner, gathering, waiting. "What just happened?" Tom whispered, fear etched upon his face. Sarah's heart pounded. "This isn't over. They're still here." The shadows whispered amongst themselves, planning, scheming, and a chilling realization settled like ice in her veins. They were waiting. "Sarah, what are they planning?" Tom asked, visions of dread swirling in his wide eyes. "We need to find a way out. They won't let us go." As the light flickered, revealing cracks of darkness stretching toward them again, Sarah felt cold fingers of despair brushing her back. A lurking terror hung heavy in the air, amplifying the fear that bubbled within her. What would come next? The battle was just beginning. the true nature of their tormentors still concealed in that vast, swirling abyss waiting to strike again. And all she could ask herself now was a haunting thought: what horrors lay beyond the light? As the silence enveloped them, Sarah felt the weight of the shadows creeping closer, insidious whispers curling around her ears like smoke. The air pulsed with a dark energy, pressing against her from all sides, a reminder that the danger was far from finished. She could feel the cocoon that had offered them temporary protection starting to weaken, the light flickering as if it were drawing its final breaths. "Tom," she breathed, panic rising in her chest. "Hold on tight. Whatever they're planning, we need to be ready." The wall of shadows quivered, and from within, the dark tangle emerged indistinct shapes, eyes glittering like shards of glass. They flickered in and out of focus, drawing nearer with a sense of terrible purpose. Sarah's heart raced as she could almost make out their features, faces etched with pain and longing. "Join us." Their voices slithered through the air, haunting and seductive. "Let us help you remember." "No!" Sarah shouted, defiance blazing in her voice. "I won't let you take us. You can't have our memories." Suddenly, the stillness shattered. The shadows lunged. Before she could react, they struck out with powerful tendrils that wrapped around her arms and legs, pulling her toward the darkness. She felt like a marionette, strings pulled tight, twisting her body away from Tom. She could feel his panic growing as he struggled to break free, his eyes wild with terror. "Sarah," he cried, voice cracking, "don't let them take you." She fought and twisted, desperation fueling her energy. "I can't lose you, Tom. We have to stay together." The shadows hissed, the noise rising to a deafening shriek as they began to swirl around them again, a furious cyclone of darkness swirling in for the kill. "You will regret this. You cannot escape." Amidst the chaos, Sarah's memories flashed before her. Past laughs, silly jokes, even the way Tom smiled after a long day. She clung to each precious moment as the shadows with their icy grips threatened to drain her of her very essence. Tom's image burned in her mind like a beacon, pushing her to fight for him. Then a new voice pierced the cacophony, sharp and commanding. "Enough!" The shadows recoiled, momentarily distracted by the sudden intrusion, which brought a glimmer of hope flickering through the gloom. Out of the swirling shadows, a figure emerged, a woman cloaked in darkness, her features hidden but eyes glowing like embers. "You do not belong to them," she proclaimed, a surge of power emanating from her. The shadows hissed with fury, their grasp loosening as they turned to face this new threat. "Who are you?" Sarah gasped, feeling both terrified and intrigued. "I am an echo," the woman said, her voice haunting and smooth. "I was once lost to them, but I found a way to break free. You must listen." The shadows writhed angrily at her presence, their malice palpable. Sarah's heart thudded in her chest. "You can help us?" "Yes," she said, stepping closer, "but it will come at a cost. You have to confront what you fear the most. Only then can you escape." "And if we fail," Tom's voice trembled as he clung to Sarah, "then you will be lost forever." The shadows writhed, impatient and furious, clawing at the edges of her vision. They were gathering strength, preparing for another assault. "Fight! You must fight!" the woman urged, and Sarah felt the growing terror igniting her resolve anew. "What do we have to do?" she asked, voice shaking with a mix of fear and fierce determination. "Face the truth hidden within your hearts, and do not let go of one another." As the shadows lunged forward once more, Sarah and Tom stood resolute, breathing heavily, ready to confront their darkest fears together. A piercing scream shattered the night, echoing from deep within the shadows, and Sarah's heart leapt into her throat. "Are you ready?" Tom whispered. "No,"
she admitted, feeling the pit of dread expand. "But we have to try." And with that, they braced themselves for the chaos that was about to unfold, knowing the true agonizing test awaited just beyond the light that flickered desperately around them. How would they survive the nightmares that lurked in the corridors of their minds? Only time would reveal the horrors they'd have to face. Tom squeezed Sarah's hand tighter, a lifeline within the sea of darkness that threatened to consume them. Their surroundings shifted, an oppressive pressure building as the shadows grew heavier. The air crackled, and a low growl reverberated around them. Whatever was lurking beneath the surface was awakening, hungry. "Focus on each other," the Echo Woman commanded. "Visualize what you fear the most. Let it rise to the surface. Only then can you confront it." Sarah's breath quickened as her past danced at the edges of her mind. She closed her eyes momentarily, trying to steady her racing heart. Images twisted like grotesque marionettes, her childhood home, echoing laughter suddenly turning into screams. A dark figure stood in the window, eyes burning blue, a ghost of a memory. "Tom," she whispered, keeping her voice steady despite the tremor in her limbs. "What do you see?" He swallowed hard, his expression hollow. "I see my brother. His voice cracked like glass breaking. "He never made it home. I should have saved him." The shadows stirred, more alive now, twisting in response to their vulnerabilities. "Remember," they hissed. "Remember your failures." "No!" Tom shouted, struggling against the tendrils that darted and coiled around him. "I didn't fail. I was just a kid. I didn't know." The Echo Woman took a step forward, her voice booming over the rising tide of despair. "You must acknowledge the truth. Embrace the pain. Only then can you free yourself from these shadows." The shadows howled, creeping closer, pulling at their resolve. "Join us. You will find peace," they promised, sweetly deceptive. "I refuse!" Sarah screamed, feeling the weight of their manipulation. Memories rolled through her like tidal waves. "We aren't here to wallow. We're here to confront you." The shadows reeled. The ground beneath them trembled, as if responding to their defiance. "Face yourself," the Echo Woman urged. Sarah's head swam with hesitation, but she gripped on to Tom tighter. "We can't let them win, Tom. Focus on the truth. What do you fear, deep down?" "I fear the day I lost him, the day I realized I was too late. I see his face every night," Tom admitted, voice thick with sorrow. "But I couldn't save him, and now I'll never forgive myself." "Let the memories carve through that guilt," Sarah said fiercely, feeling her own fears press against her like ice. "Let them guide you." Tom closed his eyes, the tears rolling down his cheeks. "I love him. I should have been there." "Then fight for his memory," Sarah cried. The shadows screeched, recoiling as their resolve began to solidify. With a loud roar, the darkness morphed, revealing shapes twisting and contorting into the likeness of their fears. The ghostly figure of Tom's brother took form, eyes full of pain, yet surprisingly calm. "Let it go," he urged, voice almost a whisper. "You're not to blame. You have a chance to make things right." Tom's breath hitched, the weight of 1,000 regrets pressing on his chest. "I'm sorry," he cried, but it was no longer a plea, it was a promise. As his clenched fists unfurled, the shadows shrieked in rage. They surged forward, darkness turning to a churning mass, seeking to reclaim what was slipping away. "Do you feel it, Sarah?" Tom's voice was filled with both terror and triumph. "We're breaking through." "Hold on, we can do this," she encouraged, feeling a power blossom within her like fire.
The shadowy tendrils thrashed wildly, desperate to hold them back. "You are part of us," they screamed. "You cannot escape." But as Sarah caught another glimpse of Tom's brother, a wave of white-hot anger surged through her. She ripped away the shadows, no longer afraid. "No, I refuse to be a part of your pain." Light burst forth as if activated by her words, splitting the darkness like a sliver of dawn breaking through the night. But just as the shadows began to dissolve around them, a new sound erupted, a devastating, otherworldly laugh. "What have you done?" came a voice deeper than the dark, a voice that sent chills racing down Sarah's spine. "You have only awakened worse horrors." The ground shook beneath their feet, and the walls of shadow twisted. Tom's grip faltered as the laughter echoed all around them, a sinister embrace. "Tom, we can't give up," Sarah shouted, panic rising again. "It's too late," he gasped, as the darkness began to shift once more, a new horror lurking just beyond their grasp. What are we about to face? Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. But the answer was lost in the void as they braced once again for the unspeakable terror that had only just begun to unravel. The shadows writhed, coiling like serpents hungry for flesh, dark tendrils snaking around Tom and Sarah, pulling them back toward the abyss. The laughter swelled, thick with malice, drowning out their resolve. "What do you mean, worse horrors?" Sarah barked, her voice rising in desperation. She could feel the dark presence pressing against her soul, whispering doubts and fears that clawed at her mind. Tom shook his head violently, his eyes wide with panic. "I don't know, but we can't let it swallow us again." A figure loomed ahead, vague and shifting, emerging from the depths of the tormenting darkness. It moved like smoke, swirling with features that twisted and blurred. Sarah's heart pounded, and a chill crawled down her spine. Was this the source of their terror? As the figure solidified, it took the shape of a grotesque mockery, an amalgamation of their fears, their failures, the mandates of the shadows that sought to consume them. "You thought you could escape?" it hissed, a voice dripping with scorn. "You awaken the past, but the past awakens too." Tom recoiled, eyes darting. "What do you want from us?" he yelled, desperation rising in his tone. "Oh, my dear Tom," the figure cooed, its face eerily smooth, devoid of features except for an uncanny smile. "I want your despair. I want your guilt. You are already mine." "Stop!" Sarah cried, stepping forward, instinctively pulling Tom behind her. "You won't take him!" The figure laughed, sound echoing off the walls of darkness like a chilling melody. "You think you can protect him? You don't even understand the depths of your own pain, let alone his." "No!" Tom gasped, gripping Sarah's arm. "We are not your puppets. We'll break free." The laughter intensified, resonating with a dark energy that surged through the air. The shadows danced wildly, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. An eerie glow pulsed from the figure, illuminating the shadowy surroundings, revealing anguish distorted in the dark corners of their subconscious. Sarah's vision blurred. Her childhood home emerged, warped and filled with shadows that snickered at her. Laughter twisted, morphing into screams that clawed at her senses. She shut her eyes against it, breathing sharply, attempting to drown it out. "Face your fear," the Echo Woman commanded, her voice a beacon amid chaos. "Only then will you find your strength." Tom looked at Sarah, their eyes locking with a silent understanding. "We need to do this together. We can't let it win." "Together," Sarah echoed, filled with a newfound sense of urgency. As they focused on the figure, ready to confront it head-on, an explosion of energy erupted between them, and a deep, guttural growl erupted from the shadows. The ground shook violently, and the walls of darkness began to crack. "What is happening?" Tom cried, the terror of their situation creeping back into his voice. "I don't know, but we can't lose ourselves now. Fight back." Their combined will surged, flames of hope igniting from within. Fear, anger, love, all spiraled into a single force, crashing against the figure with an explosion of light. And as the burst of brightness enveloped them, the suffocating darkness writhed, yet the laughter turned into shrieks, echoing through the void, desperate and pained. "You cannot banish me. I am every failure you've ever faced," it screamed, its tone shifting from mocking to furious. "We're bound together. You'll never escape." But before the shadows could retaliate, a sudden tremor cracked the ground further, splitting it open. Sarah's scream mingled with the frenzied shouts of the shadows as they were pulled apart. The light flickered, darkness swirling chaotically as the ground yawned beneath them. "Hold on," Tom shouted, gripping Sarah's hand as the fissure widened. "We can't let go." In that instant, a massive force yanked them downward, plummeting into a deeper nightmare, a chasm of despair. And then, nothing. Silence enveloped them. She opened her eyes, the darkness thick and suffocating once more. An unnameable dread clawed at her throat. "Tom," she whispered, but even her voice felt swallowed by the abyss. But there was no reply, only fading echoes of the malevolent figure's laughter reverberating in the void. She felt lost in an unfathomable darkness, an unseen force dragging her down further, away from whatever hope they had just grasped at. "Tom!" But the shadows closed in tight, wrapping around her like chains, promising eternal suffering. What deeper fear awaited in this unfathomable pit? Was Tom lost to her forever? The darkness thickened, taunting her with visions of what might come next, and she knew without doubt the worst was far from over. As the oppressive darkness gripped Sarah, she felt reality twist into a surreal nightmare. It was as if she were underwater, every sound muffled and distant, every light snuffed out. Tom's name echoed in her mind, but no answer came. "Tom!" she screamed, the desperation slicing through the silence. The shadows coiled tighter, wrapping around her body, pulling her down deeper into despair. Memories of their life together played like a broken film reel flashing through her mind. Their first date, his laughter, the warmth of shared mornings. With every pulse of remembrance, the shadows tightened, threatening to erase those precious memories altogether. Fighting against their hold, she mustered every ounce of love and determination within her. "I won't let you take him," she cried, her voice hoarse but fierce. Suddenly, a flicker of light emerged from within the chasm, a desperate glimmer dancing like a star. "Focus on it," the Echo Woman's voice urged from the depths of her memory. "It's your love. Embrace it." With renewed strength, Sarah anchored on that spark, envisioning Tom's face, the man who loved her fiercely and who had given her the happiest days of her life. Doubt flickered, but was quickly extinguished by an overwhelming urge to fight for him. "Tom," she whispered, feeling warmth seep through shadows threatening to engulf her. "We'll find our way back, together." She focused on the memory of their last embrace, the weight of his gaze, and the strength of his laughter. The shadows hissed in response, agitated by the force of her resolve. But she pressed on, allowing her love for him to explode like wildfire within her. "Tom!" she shouted again, but this time it rang louder, more powerful, as energy surged from her heart. "Wherever you are, I'm coming for you." The darkness howled around her, shrieking in fury as the flicker of light expanded, illuminating the edges of the void. Like a battle cry, the shadows recoiled, shifting and distorting. In that moment, Sarah felt a shift within the chasm, a kind of awakening. "Together!" she roared, pushing against the crushing weight. "We're stronger together!" The chasm erupted with light as visions of their love surged forward, powerful and piercing through the darkness. Chains of despair snapped, scattering shadows into the winds, shrieks echoing into silence as the tendril struggled against her revolt. And then she felt it, the gentle squeeze of a familiar hand wrapping around hers with all the urgency she had been longing for. "Sarah!" Tom's voice cut through the void, filled with warmth and relief. Her heart soared as he appeared through the light, his face radiant, eyes glimmering like stars. "There you are," she breathed, tears mixing with the light swirling around them, a palpable energy that surged with possibility. "Together!" Tom echoed, determination radiating. Their fingers intertwined tightly in a shared resolve. They stepped forward, towards one another, and toward the light, finding strength in their unity. As they approached, the shadows screamed, swirling chaotically, desperate to reclaim their prey. "You cannot escape! You belong to us!" But with each step they took together, the light surged, illuminating their path like a guiding star. "No!" Sarah called out, her voice steady. "We decide our fate. We refuse to be bound by our past or our pain." Tom nodded, eyes fierce with courage. "We choose love." In a final surge, they burst through the threshold of darkness into blinding light, the shadows shrieking in defeat, dissipating like fog under the sun's rays. They were back, breathless, in a familiar setting, the living room of their home, sunlight streaming through the windows, illuminating the corners with a golden hue. A sensation of serenity washed over them, quelling the remnants of despair that had desperately clung to their souls. Tom pulled Sarah into a tight embrace, holding her as if she were the very essence of life itself. "We made it," he whispered, relief flooding his voice, a sweet sound that washed away the haunting echoes. Tears streamed down Sarah's face, not from sorrow, but from relief and joy. "We did. We faced the darkness, not just for ourselves, but for each other." As they stood together, still wrapped in the warmth of the moment, Sarah realized that love was the ultimate strength. It had the power to fight through sorrow, to illuminate even the darkest corners. "Whatever comes next," she said, lifting her head to meet Tom's gaze, "we'll face it together." A solemn promise lingered in the air between them, fortifying their hearts against future shadows, while cherishing the lessons learned from those haunting trials. In the end, they had not only confronted their fears, but they had emerged from the darkness, hand in hand, heart in heart, a testament to the unyielding bond they had forged through love, grief, and resilience. As the world blurred around them, hints of the past still stayed, but they would carry forward the lessons learned, leaving behind the ghosts while choosing to embrace the memories, the joy, and the promise of a new dawn. A fresh start. Their story wasn't over. It was just beginning. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that dive into realms of the unknown. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep us alive in your feed. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Let us hear your thoughts. And listen, you must share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to support the channel. True fans like you know how vital it is to lift us up. In the end, they had not only confronted their fears, but they had emerged from the darkness, hand in hand, heart in heart, a testament to the unyielding bond they had forged through love, grief, and resilience. As the world blurred around them, hints of the past still stayed, but they would carry forward the lessons learned, leaving behind the ghosts while choosing to embrace the memories, the joy, and the promise of a new dawn. A fresh start. Their story wasn't over. It was just beginning.